Article 3 The Executive. Section 1, Clause 1 Term of Office. The executive power shall be vested in a President of Yoruba nation. That person shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and, together with a Vice President who shall run on the same ticket as the President, chosen for the same term, be elected, as follows. Section 1, Clause 2 Qualifications for President. No person shall be eligible to the office of the President of Yoruba nation or any other elected office in a state or within any branch of Yoruba nation, except such person be a citizen of Yoruba nation, with 2 natural parents of Yoruba ancestral lineage. Section 1, Clause 3 Age requirement for President. At the time of the adoption of this Constitution or any time after adoption thereof, no person shall be eligible to the office of President or Vice President, neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained to the age of 35 years. Section 1, Clause 4 State elections for President and Vice President. Each state shall conduct its own election of the President and Vice President, according to the Uniform Election Law, which the Assembly shall promulgate without contradicting the provisions set forth herein. Section 1, Clause 5 Transparent elections. The election shall be administered in a manner that promotes transparency, live and up-to-date results consistently published, and shall include volunteer observers who are cleared to observe in advance of the election. Section 1, Clause 6 Local Government and State Electoral Commissions. Each state shall have a state electoral commission, and each local government shall have an electoral commission. No lawmaker of the first or second chambers, or person holding an office of trust or profit under Yoruba nation, shall serve on the electoral commission of any local government or the state. Section 1, Clause 7 Composition of State Electoral Commission. The state's overall electoral commission shall comprise of equal representatives from various political parties, who meet the Assembly's requirement in advance of the election. Section 1, Clause 8 Composition of State Electoral Commission. Each local government shall have an electoral commission, comprised of equal representatives from the various political parties, who meet the Assembly's requirement in advance of the election. Section 1, Clause 9 Voting by citizens in diaspora. Citizens of Yoruba nation and diaspora shall be eligible to vote through their respective consulates. Section 1, Clause 10 Local governments certifying. Upon tabulation of the ballots, each local government's electoral commission shall certify to the Secretary of that state the results of the election from that local government. Section 1, Clause 11 State Electoral Commission to certify state's results. The State Electoral Commission, headed by that state's Secretary, shall review and certify the results submitted by the individual local governments, and formally deliver the result of that state's election to the joint meeting of the Assembly. Section 1, Clause 12 Assembly to tabulate and determine winner. The Assembly shall tabulate the results of the various states, the person having won the greatest number of states shall be pronounced the winner of the election. If the Assembly's tally of states 1 reveals that 2 or more candidates won an equal number of states, the general popular vote shall be used to determine the winner. Section 2 Governor and Deputy elected similar to President and Vice President. The Governor and Deputy Governor of each state shall be elected in the same manner and with the same processes as the President and Vice President, but with their respective legislatures substituting for the role of the Assembly. Section 3, Clause 1 Succession of to office of President. In case of the removal of the President from office, or of death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the same shall devolve on the Vice President. In the case the removal of the Vice President from office, or of death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the same shall devolve on the Speaker of the First Chamber. Where necessary, the order of succession to the presidency shall be the Vice President, Speaker of the First Chamber, the Majority Leader of the Second Chamber, and the Chairman of the Council of Kings. Section 3, Clause 2. Vice President's term in office when succeeding President. Where power devolves to the Vice President, that person shall complete only the current term one. By the President succeeded, an election for the positions of President and Vice President shall take place at the conclusion of that term. Section 3, Clause 3. When some other than Vice President succeeds President. In the event the office of the Presidency devolves to the Speaker of the First Chamber, Majority Leader of the Second Chamber, or the Chairman of the Council of Kings, a new election shall be held and the new President shall be sworn into office within 90 days. The person elected as a replacement shall finish only the term of the President succeeded. An election for the positions of President and Vice President shall take place at the conclusion of that term. Where during an election year, within 90 days to the end of the term, the presidency devolves to the Speaker of the House, Majority Leader of the Second Chamber, or the Chairman of the Council of Kings, that person shall complete the term, and the only presidential election in that year shall be the prior scheduled presidential election, and the regular cycle of elections shall continue undisturbed. Section 4, Clause 4. Compensation for assuming presidency. Where the presidency devolves to the Speaker of the House, Majority Leader of the Second Chamber, or the Chairman of the Council of Kings shall not be entitled to any compensation, including but not limited to pension, beyond that which such person is entitled to, in the position occupied, before assuming the presidency. Section 4, Clause 5. President's compensation. The President shall, at stated times, receive for his services a compensation, which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from Yoruba nation, or the several states. Section 4, Clause 6. President's oath. Before the President enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation: I do solemnly swear, or affirm, that I will faithfully execute the office of President of Yoruba Nation, and will to the best of my ability, preserve, protect and defend the people of Yoruba Nation, and uphold the Constitution of Yoruba Nation. Section 4, Clause 7. Term limits on President. No person shall be elected to the office of the President more than twice, and no person who has held the office of President, or acted as President, for more than 2 years of the term to which some other person was elected President shall be elected to the office of the President more than once. Section 5, Clause 1. Commander-in-Chief of Military Forces, limits on reprisal. The President shall be Commander-in-Chief of the military forces of Yoruba Nation, authorize reprisal and sustain such beyond 72 hours, only upon authorization by the Assembly, which must decide the President's request to sustain reprisal within 48 hours of request. Section 5, Clause 2. Power over executive departments. The President may require the opinion, in writing, of the principal officer in each of the executive departments, upon any subject relating to the duties of their respective offices, and he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the Yoruba Nation, except in cases of corruption or impeachment. Section 5, Clause 3. Appointments with advice and consent of Second Chamber. The President shall have power, by and with the advice and consent of the Second Chamber, to make treaties, provided 2/3 of the lawmakers present concur, and he shall nominate, and, by and with the advice consent of the Second Chamber, shall appoint his cabinet, ambassadors, other public officers, nominate judges of the Supreme Court upon considering advice of the Judicial Commission constituted by the President from among the bar of Yoruba Nation, and similarly nominate and appoint all other officers of Yoruba Nation, whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law. Section 5, Clause 4 Receiving ambassadors and public officers. The President shall receive ambassadors and other public officers. The President shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and shall commission all the officers of Yoruba nation. Section 6 Joint Session of Assembly. At least once a year on a day the Assembly shall appoint by law, or in extraordinary circumstances, as convened by the President, there shall be a joint session of both chambers of the Assembly, where the President shall present information on the state of Yoruba nation, and recommend to their consideration such measures as the President shall judge necessary and expedient, and in case of disagreement between the chambers, with respect to the time of adjournment, the President may adjourn them for a length of time that reflects the customary practice of the Assembly. Section 7 Removal on impeachment for certain crimes. The President, Vice President and all civil officers of Yoruba nation shall be removed from office on impeachment for, and conviction of, treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Section 8, Clause 1 Removal of President for incapacity. Whenever the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as the Assembly may by law provide, transmit to the Speaker of the First Chamber the written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. Section 8, Clause 2 Presidents return to office after removal for incapacity. Thereafter, when the President transmits to the Speaker of the First Chamber his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office unless the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other body as the Assembly may by law provide, transmit within 4 days to the Speaker of the Second Chamber and the Speaker of the Chamber of Lawmaker of the First Chambers their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon the Assembly shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for that purpose if not in session. If the Assembly, within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or, if the Assembly is not in session, within 21 days after the Assembly is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both chambers that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall continue to discharge the same as acting President. Otherwise, the President shall resume the powers and duties of his office.